Two Afghan illegal immigrants who raped a child in a park are living a life of luxury in a cushy...
The British government is currently facing what analysts describe as the most significant domestic uprising in modern history, as an estimated 15,000 farmers have mobilised to paralyse nearly 40% of the nation's streets with a blockade of tractors, machinery that traditional police barriers and shields are physically incapable of stopping. The crisis was ignited by a perceived betrayal regarding inheritance tax. After promising during the election to protect rural tax reliefs, the Prime Minister and Chancellor enacted a 20% levy that critics claim will bankrupt 71,000 family farms, transforming a legacy of tax-free succession into a mandatory £400,000 bill upon the death of a patriarch. By 10:05 a.m, 5 massive columns of tractors had effectively besieged Parliament Square, ignoring threats from London police of year-long prison sentences for those participating in the blockade. The tension reached a breaking point when protesters threatened to dump 20 tons of manure directly into the parliamentary session, while police radios broadcasted a state of total panic, admitting that their standard vans were monsters compared to the agricultural hardware now sealing off every entry and exit of the government district. The standoff has taken on a chilling military dimension, with viral social media footage of armoured vehicles and hardware rolling down public highways, racking up millions of views and fueling rumours of an imminent army deployment, a claim the government has dismissed as routine logistics, but which a sceptical public has rejected outright. This domestic siege is not merely a symbolic protest, it is a calculated economic strangulation, costing the government district an estimated £2.3 million per minute and threatening to leave supermarket shelves empty within 48 hours as farmers shut down the 3 primary arteries into the capital. The political fallout is equally severe, as opposition leader Nigel Farage and other critics highlight a staggering hypocrisy in the budget. While the state seeks to seize £300 million from farmers to plug a fiscal black hole, it continues to spend £8 million a day, roughly £2 billion annually, to house illegal migrants in hotels. This comparison has turned the protest into a visceral debate over national priorities, with farmers accusing Starmer of executing a calculated land grab designed to bankrupt family estates to make room for massive solar panel arrays to meet climate summit targets. The situation has now spiraled toward a pan-European emergency following a 10-hour ultimatum issued by union leaders. If the tax is not rescinded, British farmers will coordinate with their French counterparts to blockade the Channel Tunnel. Such a move would jeopardise 26% of all trade and result in a daily loss of £350 million, a scenario so dire that diplomats in Brussels are reportedly pressuring Starmer to capitulate to avoid a continental economic collapse. Despite the gravity of the siege and the arrival of 23 additional tractor columns from central England, the Prime Minister has maintained a 7-hour silence, reportedly clinging to the hope that the protesters will eventually retreat to their fields. However, with the House of Commons erupting in allegations that the entire fiscal justification for the tax is a sham, amounting to only 0.6% of the deficit, the moral authority of the government is disintegrating. The narrative concludes that this is no longer a mere policy dispute, but a battle for the very land of Britain, where a refusal to face reality has pushed the nation to the brink of a systemic and potentially terminal political crisis. The current upheaval is framed as a calculated manoeuvre, where the bankruptcy of family farms is merely the first stage in a wider strategy to reclaim rural land for the construction of thousands of social housing units intended for new arrivals. As urban centres reach their capacity, the government is accused of turning its sights toward the countryside, essentially using a replacement strategy funded by the very farmers it is currently attempting to financially dismantle through new inheritance tax levies. While official spokesmen dismiss these claims as baseless, critics point to the staggering mathematical reality, with projections suggesting an influx of 1.5 million people in the coming year and a demographic trend where new arrivals maintain significantly higher birth rates. The saturation of the existing hotel system has forced a desperate search for large-scale alternatives. The quiet part of this plan, now being shouted by the opposition, suggests that the fiscal black hole is a convenient pretext for a more profound demographic shift, one designed to engineer a permanent political majority by replacing the traditional self-sufficient rural voter with a new electorate that is entirely dependent on the state for housing and income. This transformation is described as a cold demographic transaction where the conservative heartlands of the Midlands and the Shires are being targeted for liquidation. The logic presented is that the Prime Minister does not seek to win the votes of those who value private property and tradition. Instead, he aims to make those votes statistically irrelevant by populating their districts with state-reliant tenants who will remain eternally grateful to the party that opened the borders. The timeline is stark. As a farmer faces insolvency by April 2026 and his land is auctioned off by 2027, the arrivals landing on beaches today are fast-tracked through hotels and toward passports, ensuring that by the next election cycle, the demographics of key swing seats will be unrecognizable. This shift is accelerated by the contrasting birth rates. While the native population in the Shires continues to shrink, the households being moved into three-star hotels are described as expanding rapidly, leading to a mathematical certainty that within 15 years, villages that have voted Conservative for a century will be replaced by commuter housing estates voting Socialist by default. Ultimately, the Cabinet's refusal to engage with the tractor protests is interpreted as a sign that they are no longer looking at the next election, but at the next generation, importing a future majority to secure power for the next 50 years. The tax on agricultural inheritance is thus seen as a clearing mechanism, a way to bank up land, remove the independent owner, and install the socialist tenant in what is called the most ambitious gerrymandering operation in Western history. The opposition warns that every boat landing on the shore is viewed by the administration as a future ballot paper, and every farm that fails is a victory over a Reform UK or Tory voter. The narrative concludes that the Prime Minister, realising he cannot win the argument with the current British public, has decided to simply change the public itself, leaving the British ploughman to be criminalised and suppressed by riot squads, while undocumented arrivals are granted full access to the legal and welfare machinery of the state. The crisis has evolved into what rural communities describe as a state of financial apartheid, where the loyalty of the nation's food producers has evaporated in the face of a government that appears to fund the housing of non-citizens through the liquidation of domestic agricultural assets. This is no longer viewed as a mere logistical gridlock, but as a profound revelation of the state's true priorities. Internal police directives, reportedly issued off the record, have authorized a heavy-handed crush-the-blockade stance, prioritizing road clearance over negotiation to avoid the political embarrassment of a capital under siege. Critics argue that the state does not lack the equipment to remove the tractors, rather it lacks the moral authority to do so, choosing instead an operational handbook dictated by political correctness. This transition suggests a shift from a functional government to a predatory one, as Britain is perceived to be stripped of its heritage and resources through a ruthless application of fiscal policy. While Prime Minister Keir Starmer campaigned on a promise to fix the foundations of the country, that vow is now seen as having mutated into a mandate to demolish the foundations of British agriculture. The administration's calculations are viewed through a cynical lens. Every tax hike is framed as a test of how much the working class can absorb to continue subsidising the crisis in the English Channel. As hotel bills for new arrivals multiply into the millions and the national deficit balloons, family farms have become the designated targets to bridge the gap. This tough decision is characterised by the electorate as outright theft, creating a bitter equation where the government taxes the deaths of citizens while subsidising the arrivals of non-citizens, protecting the right of the latter to remain while sacrificing the economic security and ancestral lands of the former. Beneath the surface of the burning vans and blocked motorways, a darker transaction is reportedly taking place in the halls of power. Energy lobbyists are said to be circling the maps of distressed farmland, as the inheritance tax is interpreted not as an accident, but as an eviction notice. This clean power strategy allegedly requires thousands of acres for industrial wind and solar parks, leading to the accusation that family farms are being bankrupted to trade national food sovereignty for net zero climate targets. By forcing local producers out, the government is accused of trading wheat fields for glass panels and concrete, driving a dependency on carbon-heavy food imports flown in from thousands of miles away, a move that critics claim saves the planet by starving the island. The ultimate symbol of this divided nation is captured by flight radar data showing a massive spike in private helicopter traffic leaving London. While the architects of the tax and their media supporters avoid the gridlock they created, the working class is left in a city running out of food, policed by a force that has lost its mandate. As global markets begin to price in a potential government collapse, the City of London is described as a ghost town, with its digital economy brought to its knees by the analogue power of tractors. Despite attempts to clear the timeline by suspending social media accounts that document police retreats, the silence from Whitehall is louder than the roar of the engines. The narrative concludes that Starmer fundamentally miscalculated the brotherhood of the soil, a unified European working-class resistance that rejects the idea of globalizing a way out of domestic starvation. With hospitals declaring code black incidents and the ring of steel around the capital tightening, the scent of diesel and damp soil has replaced the elite atmosphere of Mayfair, marking a historic moment where a prime minister refuses to face the very people who feed the nation.